Listen. You smell something?
Welcome to T-Bone's Best of Roanoke show. Music, comedy, and conversation featuring HB. The Honey Badger.
Honey Badger don't care.
Now, on with the show.
This is Radio Free Roanoke, and this is episode number 93, T-Bone's Best of Roanoke show. HB, today we've got a dandy.
Yes, sir.
Listening live from Phoenix, Arizona. It's your older brother, Fred.
Yes.
Greetings from Roanoke, Fred Holley.
Greetings from Phoenix, Arizona, T-Bone and HB, as you folks are affectionately known there.
Yeah, hey, bro.
Well, listen, Fred, you are Virginia born and bred. Let's set the table here. Virginia born and bred. Where were you born?
Born in Lynchburg, Virginia.
Oh, my gosh, but where were you raised?
Raised in Chesterfield County and went to high school in Chester, Virginia at Thomas Dale.
There you go. All right, and you attended Virginia Tech, graduated in 1982?
Yes, sir.
And based on my 25 years, I'd say, of knowing you, you know a thing or two about college football, especially Virginia Tech.
Yeah, that's what they tell me. I refrain from calling myself an expert. I'm more of a historian now. Once you get up in years, I definitely, my memory's pretty good. And I have watched the game for 54 seasons since 1966. The first game I ever seen was the Notre Dame-Michigan State game as an 8-year-old.
And that would have been Parsegan, Bubba Smith, right?
Duffy Daugherty and Parsegan.
Yeah, yeah, very good. Well, listen, what we want to do, what HB and I want to do today is pick your brain. We'd like to go position by position for Virginia Tech, all-time football favorites for you. And we like, we'll go position by position. What I mean by that is running back, quarterback, whatever, defensive back. And you give us your top two based on, their impact on the program, their talent, just being a personal favorite, who you think rank as the top two in your mind.
Okay.
And you up for that challenge?
I'm up.
I know you are.
Yes.
Well, I'm gonna give you a little warm-up question before we get into it. All right?
That sounds great.
When did Virginia Tech go to their first bowl game, and who was their opponent?
That's a great question. It sounds like the 1946 Sun Bowl.
Oh. Wow.
Were you there, Fred?
I have to be honest. No, I wasn't, happily.
Happily, yeah.
Well, that's good. I didn't know they played it that far back. Okay, well, let's get started. This is let's start with offense.
Okay.
And let's go with your top two, and we'll start with your second, and give us, a little background on, why you picked this person. But let's start with running backs. Virginia Tech's had its share of good running backs. So I'm very curious, who do you see as your top two running backs all time Hokies in Virginia Tech football?
Well, I definitely, this was not an easy one to figure out, but I'll go with Kevin Jones. He was he started parts of 4 different seasons for Tech. He was the highest rated recruit ever coming into the program. Frank loved him to death. He was a hard worker. So Kevin Jones would be my number one at the running back position.
And if I remember right, I'm a WVU guy, so he gave us fits. So I would put him in my top two as well. He was from Pennsylvania, I believe, and I believe he played in the pros a little bit.
Yeah, he was a really tremendous kid. Just played really hard for Frank. Frank loved him to death, and he was one of the ones that just a workhorse. Loved to run the football. High production player, no doubt about it.
All right, now is he your number one or number two, Fred?
He'd be my number one.
All right.
There's some others that would be very close to. Well, I would say number two has more competition. I would say.
Yep. Who you got there?
Yeah.
Well, it was a tough decision. I looked at several different players, and there's some good ones out there. I'm going to say, as far as my personal second favorite, Number 2, this is a toughie, I'm telling you. I have a sentimental favorite, Roscoe Coles. He played for Tech in the 70s. He led Tech to the upset of Auburn down at Jordan-Hare Stadium in 74. In that 23-16 win, he scored a decisive touchdown. So Roscoe was a big play type of back.
Wow.
Just a really tough fella. He wasn't a big guy, but he could move real well. He was very quick and agile. So he would be my number 2 based on impact coming up. There's some other great names, of course.
Yeah.
Well, let me throw one out that I had the privilege to meet a few years ago. He was a running back. He was from Roanoke, Lee Suggs.
Yes, and Lee is in that group that I looked at, including, I would say, Lee was from Salem, a local product there. Very, very faithful player, played extremely hard. He shared time at that, with Kevin, during his career there, because they were both in the backfield. Tech had an embarrassment of riches at that time. Other players that throw in that category, honorable mentions, Ryan Williams, who eventually went to the NFL, played with the Cardinals out here for a short period of time. Kenny Oxendine.
Of course.
He came out of my old high school, Thomas Dale, right there in Chester. And then David Wilson, who was another great running back in the early 2000s for Tech. So all of those went on to the pros and had some impact. And so those come to mind.
Okay. All right. Well, let's go on to the next position. And I didn't know they had so many of these, but there's quite a bit. It's wide receivers or receivers, and that could include tight ends as well. But who would be your top 2 in the receiver position group?
Well, certainly in the modern era, you'd have to look, and I'd say just in this body of work overall, is Antonio Freeman, without a doubt. He became a very prolific receiver at Tech. He was on a team that basically, he was just a force. He put Tech on the map from a wide receiver position after the original era, going back to the 50s when Carroll Dale played.
Right.
And so with Freeman, I would add as a number 2 in the modern era, without a doubt, it would be Andre Davis. He was Michael Vick's number 1 target, played on the national championship team that played in the 99 championship game against Florida State. He was from New York State. He chagrined Syracuse, came to Tech, and made Frank very happy. He has the unique distinction of scoring a touchdown 3 different ways in a football game. He returned a kickoff. He ran for a touchdown, and I think he actually threw for a touchdown on a trick play in the same game.
That's like a trifecta.
Yeah.
I want to honorable mentions after Andre Davis would be Jared Boykin, Danny Cole, and of course Carroll Dale was one of the first great receivers at Virginia Tech back in the late 50s, late 56, 59. He also played on the 2 Green Bay Packer championship teams. He also participated in the first 2 Super Bowls in 66 and 67.
He sure did. Carroll Dale. Yep. I had a football card of him. Did you, HB?
Yes, I did. Yeah, so did we, bro.
And one other guy I remember, Fred, and I think he played wide receiver there at Tech, Eddie Royal.
Yes, and he was the one that I had written down here that I just added to the list. He would definitely be one that you want to add to the list. And then in recent time, too, there's, was it Isaiah Ford?
Yep.
Was a great receiver.
Let's go with the men up front. Who would be your top 2 offensive line?
Oh, boy, is this a rich group here, let me tell you. Well, without a doubt, it would be Tech's version of Paul Bunyan, Jimmy Pine. I mean, he was just an amazing player. Interesting information about Mr. Pine that just blew me away when I was reading about him. In 2,700 snaps from scrimmage, he allowed only 1 sack in his entire career.
Wow.
That was charged to him. That doesn't say enough about this kid, and he's not a kid. He's quite a large man.
Yeah.
He did quite a job at Tech, and Frank loved him to death. He was the first Virginia Tech All-American in school history. He is just an amazing player. 2,700 snaps at Tech.
Wow, that is unbelievable.
That's amazing, T-Bone.
Yeah, he was an Iron Man.
What's another one?
All right.
Number 2 behind him, I'll have to put a 4-year starter, allowed only 1 sack and 730 snaps. That would be Eugene Chung.
I knew it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember him. Yep. Tell us a little bit about him.
Oh, my goodness. He's just, he was just a tremendous player. He was an Asian player. He was one of the first players from California to play Virginia Tech at that position, if not at all, overall. And to be as talented as he was, just a tremendous player, Eugene Chung. I would add to that list other mentions: Jake Grove, Dwayne Brown, Blake DeChristopher, and then the man that replaced Jim Pine. There's a story behind it. His name was Billy Conity. He came in the program in '93 unheralded. Jimmy Pine took him under his wing and the coaching staff, and he ended up really being a major league player at center for Tech. He was he exceeded all expectations. He led the upset. He anchored that offensive line that led the upset of Texas in 1995 in the Sugar Bowl. So that was just a tremendous effort by Billy Conity. So I got to throw him in there.
That's when Virginia Tech, in my mind, turned a corner because they beat Texas in that bowl game, and you could just sense that something was coming on strong there.
No doubt about it. And Frank even said Cornell Brown, of course, that is an awesome defensive player that played at Tech. Frank said he was the one that raised the standard on defense at Virginia Tech. Of course, not missing, of course, back in the 80s, of course, when Bruce Smith played.
Okay.
But Bruce was kind of a lone ranger in the 80s, and then when we got to the 90s, you had Phil O'Mation come in as a coach. He was an expert defensive coordinator, and he helped Tech put their defense on the field, and he also recruited Bud Foster to come into the program. And so between those two, the defensive script was set for the future.
Okay, we'll get to the defensive line next, but let's wrap up on offense. The top two quarterbacks, I have no idea who you think is number one. Do you?
Quarterbacks?
Yes.
Quarterback.
Yeah.
Yes, quarterback.
Quarterbacks. Oh, boy, what a tough choice, I tell you. Well, without a doubt, in my mind, it's Michael Vick, the quarterback. His athletic skills are unmatched. In the NFL Combine, he put a ball in the air 90 yards, and that told them automatically they knew this guy was no joke. I mean, he had the athletic ability. His run against Florida State in the '99 championship game was absolutely mind-blowing. He had no less than 8 Florida State players miss tackles as he went zigzagged across about 2/3 of the football field.
Right. It was an unbelievable run. I still remember it that night.
Amazing run.
Watching that.
And Fred, it's pretty obvious, I think, to everybody, but do you think he had the biggest impact of any player on the Virginia Tech program?
Well, I would say so, because he was one of the major factors that got the national attention at that position for Tech. Not only that, but he strengthened the relationships Tech had with a lot of the sponsors, including Nike. They really did pick up on that, his run that he had. And as a freshman, I might add, and at the time, a freshman playing like that in a national championship game in '99 was unheard of.
That's correct.
So the level of play, no doubt about it.
All right.
There have been freshmen since that have played well, but Vic was probably the first one that ushered in, hey, a freshman can play at this level in a major championship game.
He brought Tech to the national front, I will say, no
Without a
doubt.
doubt.
And I just was going under underpasses and everything from Blacksburg to Christiansburg and out to Interstate 81. And there's no doubt, we used to kid and call it the roads that Vic built because they really poured the money in that road system because the people were coming and you had to accommodate the up in attendance and just the attention was going on at that time.
Yeah, it'd be hard to argue with Michael Vick being number one in that category. And so I picked my number 2 here, but it was a tough decision. Not really, though, when you break it down as far as production at Tech. Tyrod Taylor.
Oh, yeah.
4-year starter.
Yes.
He was so good at protecting the football. He had one of the lowest turnover rates of any quarterback in Tech history. Just a tremendously dependable player. Again, Beamer loved him to death. He just gave his all. He was a major force on Tech and, of course, was instrumental in Tech winning the 2010 ACC title over Florida State.
Yeah.
So that was a big win.
And, he still plays in the pros, but in college, to me, when I'd watch him, he was always a bit of a magic man. He could always do something to
keep the
get
drive
going
alive.
down the field.
Yeah.
Yeah, he led that memorable comeback to beat Nebraska on September 19, 2009, right there in Blacksburg when Tech trailed 15-0 for the entire game. And then he led 2 drives in the fourth quarter that pulled the game out, and Tech won 16-15.
All right, honorable mentions for quarterback.
John Stroud,
Yeah.
without a doubt, he put Tech on the map. He still holds the total passing record for one game for Tech at 534 yards. He did it against Houston in '72. He also led in 1972, led the NCAA in total and passing offense. So I would say Mr. Stroud was probably your. Now there was a man prior to him in '63, Bob Swikert, who was very well regarded, but he came along in an era where you played multiple positions. He played 3 different positions at Tech, but he was all Southern Conference.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Well, as we segue into defense, you mentioned a couple of legends there, Bud Foster and Phil Almatian.
Phil Almatian, yes.
Yeah, and we still hear Phil on the local radio up here in Roanoke. But those were wonderful, wonderful defensive coaches, and they kind of set the tone for the defense. So, who would be your top two, your defensive linemen?
Oh, defensive lineman, okay. Well, without a doubt, I'd have to say you'd have to put Bruce Smith at the top of the list. That's a pretty easy choice. I mean, when you think about it, what Bruce accomplished, he basically put Tech's defense on the map. In 1981 to 84, he was called the Sack Man. That's what they nicknamed him. He had 71 tackles behind the line of scrimmage in his career at Tech, 46 sacks. He won the Outland Trophy in '84, and he was elected to the NFL Hall of Fame in 2009. I'd say that says a lot.
That says a lot. I think he was #1 draft pick of the Buffalo Bills, right?
Was. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, had a great NFL career, long, still respected today.
He's become actually really great and instrumental as far as a mentor for a lot of players as well as coaches. He's come along and really contributed in many other ways,
Right.
And he's done a lot of charity work as well.
Yeah, I met him once at the VA Medical Center here in Salem, Virginia, and just a nice man.
Tremendous individual, and that was certainly, I'd say he was certainly Mr. Bill Dooley's one of his prize recruits. I would say, if not the best one in the Bill Dooley era.
There you
at Virginia
go.
Tech.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Who would be your #2 behind Bruce Smith on the defensive line?
Okay, well, we've got some others. I got to tell you, it's a tough second pick, and if you look at what they accomplished, I would say Frank always said Cornell Brown raised the standard at Tech and during his tenure there. He's the one that changed the culture on defense. But you would have to include as an honorable mention, and not maybe tied for second, because Bruce Smith was #1 in the history of sacks at Virginia Tech. Cornell Brown was #2. #3, here's a name you've probably heard before, Corey Moore.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
He's #3 all-time sack leader at Virginia Tech, and I've seen him play many times where he just absolutely was. To me, he's the closest thing to Lawrence Taylor that ever played at Virginia Tech. I mean, he in the 1999 game against Clemson, if I recall correctly, or it was in the late 90s, he had 7 sacks in one game. They said he was virtually unblockable in that game, and when Tech destroyed Clemson, I think the final score was 37-11.
He's what you would call a disruptor.
Yeah.
He was very much so. I think he ended up playing on the Jets in the NFL for a while. I followed him, after that, but certainly just made a huge contribution. Those 3 guys right there, I would say would be John Engelberger is #4 in sacks, and I'd say you'd have to mention him as an honorable mention, John Engelberger.
Yeah, I remember him.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Linebackers. You've had a history of very, very good linebackers there at Virginia Tech. Who would be your top 2?
Oh, without doubt here, there's been some great ones. I would have to say, as a middle linebacker, I would throw Vince Hall in that group.
Mm-hmm.
He was a middle linebacker, played really well at Tech. He just established himself. He continued the culture, the defensive culture that Bud Foster established. Without a doubt, he would be at the top of my personal list. Just always seemed to be at the right place at the right time when the ball snapped. Just always was in the middle of the play.
I remember him. Yeah. A lot of highlights of that guy.
All over the field.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, and then let's keep the countdown going. Who would be #2?
#2, it's a pretty tough decision, but I did manage to nail it down at linebacker. It's I'm going to say Cody Grimm because Cody was one of those guys that came in as a 2 to 3 star recruit, and Beamer's forte was taking that raw player, and bringing him in as a 2 or 3 star player and making him a 4-star player by the time he left. And I'd say that would be a great example. Would be Cody Grimm. He was third-team All-American in 1999 on the Virginia Tech team that went to the national championship game. So, awesome player.
Yeah.
All right. Let's switch over to defensive backs. I think for a long time the pros have considered Virginia Tech like a harvest field for good defensive backs. Who would be your top 2 there?
And I don't want to digress, but just a brief moment here. I want to throw Mike Widger's name in as a linebacker of honorable mention. He played 67 to 69. He also played alongside Frank Beamer, was a good friend of Frank's. He was only 195 pounds and really did a tremendous job back in the late 60s for the Jerry Claiborne defenses that Tech had. So and then thought I'd mention him.
Yeah.
Defensive back, oh boy. We've had some great ones, no doubt. You mentioned Brandon Flowers, of course, but my number one there is going to be D'Angelo Hall.
Yeah, long-time NFL career, great at Tech.
Oh, amazing. He's the closest person to Charles Woodson Tech ever had. I would say he matched up really good with Charles, as far as his abilities, his instincts, just a complete all-around player on defense. Again, one of Beamer's favorite players, D'Angelo Hall. He became a great mentor later as well. He's been just a leader on the field. I would say he's the number one guy.
Okay. Well, I remember him very well from his playing days, and now I hear him on the radio. He's on the Washington football team broadcast team.
Oh, yeah, and I'm so glad to hear that. And D'Angelo is just a great person. I had a chance to not meet him, but see him from a distance, when I was covering Tech football in the late 90s, on campus. So, yeah.
All right. Who's your number two?
Tough to pick again here, but I'm going to say, and he has had a great pro career, Cam Chancellor.
Yeah.
Played safety mostly, but Cam, I would have to say, and of course he plays, if I'm not mistaken, he's up in Seattle, played some time up there. And so Cam Chancellor would be my surprise pick maybe for number two for some folks. There's some other names that come up. Jimmy Williams, who played cornerback and safety. Brandon Flowers, of course. Gene Bunn is an older name to throw up in that position. He had 18 interceptions, still has the record for career interceptions, if I'm not mistaken, from 76 to 78. I watched Gene play as a student at Tech. So Gene Bunn, yeah. And then, of course, Frank Gloria, who played safety with Frank Beamer on defense. When Beamer was a quarterback, Frank Gloria was safety from 65 to 67. Yep.
Yeah.
So that's the D-line, the linebackers, and the defensive backs. And, of course, Virginia Tech's also known for their Beamer ball. So tell us about special teams. Who would be your top two special teams players? And that could be a kicker or punter or returner or a punt blocker.
Cover
or whatever.
guy. Yeah.
Well, I would say, believe it or not, I would put in that position Andre Davis return kicks. He had at least one kickoff and one punt return. I know he was on both teams. So I would have to put Andre in that category as definitely a mention. As far as kicking, I think it comes down to one kicker without a doubt. It would be, and of course, T-Bone, I know you know who I'm going to say.
I do know.
Yeah.
I can remember watching him.
He would be the one and only Shane Graham.
That's right.
From 1999, the Miracle in Morgantown.
That's
I would
right.
have to say he would be very high in Virginia Tech folklore when it comes to kicking.
Yeah, and he had a wonderful pro career. But that night, the Miracle in Morgantown, that was a battle between WVU and Virginia Tech, and Michael Vick scrambled out of the pocket, and he's going down towards the sideline, and our guy thought he was going to step out of bounds, and he kept going, and then your guy comes in there and knocks down that field goal. So just, I thought that would be your pick. I mean, he's etched in my mind forever.
Yeah.
Well, and there's a couple other reasons too. His career field goal percentage was 71.4%. That's pretty remarkable. And then he had 97 consecutive point after touchdowns.
Wow.
If you want a reliable kicker, Shane was definitely that from short range.
And had a long NFL career. So
Sure
a
did.
lot of guys, off of Virginia Tech, contributed in NFL very well.
Well, those are the players, Fred, but just coaching. And let's throw out some of your favorite coaches and why.
Oh my goodness! Well, if we want to start with the position, some position coaches I remember. Billy Height, of course, at Tech, a major contributor to the program in many ways. Just a legendary as coach there, and Billy assisted in so many different things for Frank over the years. You'd have to mention Billy Height, of course. Bud Foster, the legendary defensive coordinator. The closest to Bud today in college football is Brent Venables down at Clemson. Every time I see Brett, I think of Bud. I really do. And Brent's doing a great job for Clemson. So, that's I'd say Foster has cemented his place in history at Virginia Tech on defense. Other coaches, so if we move to head coaches, Phil LeMason, I wanted to mention as a defensive coordinator, and his contributions to the program cannot be underestimated. I mean, he absolutely changed the culture defensively at Tech during the Beamer's time in the 90s, that formative years, the mid-90s. So Phil LeMason.
All right. And then I know you've interviewed Frank before, Frank Beamer.
Frank Beamer, yeah,
tell
bro.
Tell us about that.
Well, it was a 1997 game on ESPN. That was a night game, a Saturday night game, where I was up there covering Tech. It was my second year doing this. I did 3 years, 96, 7, and 8. And Frank, it was a game where Tech, everything just went right. So this is going to be a pretty easy interview, right? So you go to the locker room, and, of course, I followed him over to the Merriman Center, and we went in there. And, Frank, we're all standing in a big room, and here I am, of course, with a little tape recorder in my hand, and then all these ESPN guys. I managed to get to the front of the line.
Wow.
I'm standing right at the front with the microphone practically right at Frank's face. He comes in and sits down in a chair, throws the towel back behind him, and wipes his forehead, and he goes, whew. And when Tech had just won the game pretty decisively, I think it was like 47-0 or something over Syracuse, and Syracuse was a ranked team. So Frank was quite happy with the performance. So someone had to ask a question, so I just raised my hand, and Frank goes, you. And I said, Frank, this is one of those days where I'm sure everything went right, but would you not say that the team's mental preparation was just as important as the physical preparation coming into this game and how they played? He says, without question.
Very cool,
So
yeah.
these reporters around me nodding their heads as I'm kind of getting a feel for what, how this is playing. And so Frank just went into a really eloquent explanation of how that all works together. And so I just really felt good about that. I mean, I know it probably was a softball question, but Frank was, handled it with serious aplomb.
Yeah.
I have to give him credit.
What a cool memory, yeah.
It endeared me to him. Yeah,
Gosh.
when you're right there.
Well, Fred, I met Frank one time. It was Frank Beamer night at the Salem Red Sox Stadium, and he posed for a selfie with us, and just a nice guy. So you've given us a very eloquent summary of the Virginia Tech football. As we get ready to wrap it up, from afar out there in Arizona, where do you see the future of Virginia Tech football? How's it going, and where do you see it going?
Well, I like what the program did when they brought Mr. Fuente in. I think Justin is a great guy. He's a tremendous individual. He has great experience. Frank handpicked him. It was a tremendous pick. And, his heart is in everything he does at Tech, and I know that. And to be not an alum of Virginia Tech, that's impressive. I think where we are with Justin, he's gone through some growing pains getting his administration in at Tech and getting the with of course Foster his retirement last year. He's got his work cut out for him. It's the recruiting battles are just so hot and heavy now, and so right now with Tech, with the 757 area code in the state of Virginia being so deep in talent, Fuente has to of course keep that pipeline going as well as pick up some of the best recruits. He's shown to be very adept at getting what I would call junior college transfers to come over and contribute, one being Jared Evans in 2016. I thought that was a major league pickup because Jared was one of the top JUCO transfers in the U.S.
Right.
at that time out of Dallas. So Fuente's definitely got the instincts. He's got the guile. I think he's very positive. The kids pick up on him. I think the biggest thing for Fuente in this situation is being able to recruit the depth necessary to carry the program forward.
Right, and I'll give him a lot of credit for one more transfer, Khalil Herbert. That gentleman is electrifying when he runs. My goodness.
Yes.
But
he is one of two Oregon transfers. The other one, of course, would be Braxton Burmeister right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to have to leave it there, but I think I'd like to get back together with you in the spring of 2021. Let's do some basketball Virginia Tech talk.
Yeah, all right.
Let's do it.
All right, my friend.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Fred, thank you.
Keep things together
you,
out there.
All right. Thank you,
All right.
HB.
All right, man. Go get them.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Take care. Have a great day.
Thanks, JT.